afternoon, we will have our next presenter is William Kronsast. So he's from the Manawatu Community Law Centre. He will talk about a wide range of issues that new and experienced clubs and associations may experience from inception through to operational plans. Welcome, William.
So it's up to me now. Now I'm sure you've all had busy mornings and lots of information thrown at you, so I'm going to keep it relatively simple. The main thing that can be taken by you out of me speaking today is that the Manawatu Community Law Centre exists as someone who can assist you with clubs. I'll discuss the various ways we can do that and things you as club members should be thinking about to make sure your clubs are as healthy as possible. So going forward really is explaining what the Manawatu Community Law Centre can do. The main people, if you were to contact us, we're part of the Legal Entities Project. So that's something the Manawatu Community Law Centre established, well, starting July 1, as a way to engage with a wide range of clubs, societies and other groups within the Manawatu region. What that means we can do is provide you sort of face-to-face, one-on-one engagement and talk you through whatever issues you have. If you do come to us, there'll be 2 points of contact. The first will be me. I'm the solicitor, one of two in the law centre, and the second will be Helen Jonason here, who's a legal executive. Both of us have an understanding of clubs' demands, the legislation, and a wide range of extra legal ideas to help you get through any issues you've got and keep you again as healthy as possible. Secondly, the most basic, raw thing that each of us will have to do will be document certification. Boring that it needs to be done now that the Anti-Money Laundering and Countering Financial Terrorism Act come through. You'll see banks and other societies are going to start asking you for a lot of documentation. If that needs to be certified, Jesus, bring it to us and we'll make sure that's done as quickly and painlessly as possible. And finally, the big one that we're experimenting with is mediation services. When things go wrong, it's easy to lawyer up and fight it out in court, as we've seen in the last few months. But if possible, something you should be keeping incredibly aware is whether that can be mediated out. Whether bringing both parties to the table with a mediator and being able to talk through the issue without making it worse is something available to your clubs. Quick and hopefully easy way of dealing with issues before things spiral out of control. An important thing to discuss, if you are going to come to us, is how that will be done. I know many of you here are representatives of the board or whatever your club's formed as. How will your point of contact with us be? What can be done easily to begin with is simply communicating with us and us both deciding how we should be discussing things. As representatives, it's probably going to be a bit hard to feed everything back to your clubs, so maybe arranging with us how we can meet entire boards can be available. We've got boardrooms and we're willing to go outside of work hours to meet with large members of your boards or clubs to actually get the wheels moving instead of just having a bit of a back and forth dialogue that takes forever to go somewhere. We hear about getting issues sorted as quickly and cleanly as possible, making sure that whatever you need, we're here to help without creating stagnation. What I've really thought of, the three easiest ways we can break down what we do is into society guidance, society health checks, and dispute resolution. Ultimately, what I'm talking about today is to get some ideas brewing of what does my club need, and falling into one of those three categories, which I'll talk about in order soon. Ultimately, that's simply saying, can we guide your society? Can we make sure it's functioning as healthy as possible? And if things are starting to go wrong, can we either stay those issues or can we work through them to a resolution? The first we see is guidance. Now, I'm looking around, there does appear to be some quite organised clubs here, so there'll be less emphasis on constitutional reform, but constitutions and other founding documents of your club are absolutely critical with making sure that as you operate, you've got clear guidelines of what you need going forward. Now, what's important to look at, and I think all clubs, irrespective, should go back and look at their constitutions, look at their documents. If it's something like 2 pages, it's probably missing a word. Make sure that those documents are as accurate as possible. And that'll be important in the second step, which I've talked about, is that warrant of fitness for your clubs. You can communicate with us and say, are we doing the best we can in our constitution? Are we missing anything? And if we are, what do we need to put in? Now we have rudimental checklists of what needs to be in a constitution, which I'm more than happy to talk to you about to provide and make sure you're ticking all those boxes. If you are going somewhere wrong, what we can do is look at making better constitutions with a bit of a back and forth between your board and myself. Now, I've got to say that we can't write the constitution from start to finish, but if there are ongoing issues, what I think is important is looking at what other clubs are doing around you. How do the other clubs form their constitutions in these documents? What are they doing right? What are they doing wrong? And how can we bring everything in order? A lot of the more organised groups have fantastic documents that I've seen so far. So using them as bouncing off points to get your clubs in order is fantastic. That's especially important for other groups that are sort of subsidiaries of general big things, like Rugby New Zealand and stuff like that, or regional clubs, bringing them in order to what the national bodies see fit. And that's important, as everything should line up as nicely as possible. Secondly, it's about communicating with the board, like I've said. At the starting point, it'll be communicating with a representative, but that's not by any means the whole of your club. We've got to make sure everyone's opinions are as voiced as possible, and that prevents issues down the track. So getting a dialogue moving between myself and your club is critical. And that's what we want to establish as quickly and cleanly as possible so we can move forward to actually dealing with things. And finally, making sure whatever documents you produce are the best reflections of your society or club as possible. Making sure that the views of what you hope to achieve are carried through your documentation is important. Like any constitution, it has to be reflective of where you are and where you want to go. And making sure your constitutions are as clean as possible, show your goals, means everyone going forward has a very clear line of what they should be achieving. Secondly, policy development. Now, we've got a large folder of policies down the front. I only want to show that they exist. What we have to say at the end of the day is finding which policies are a good fit for your organisation, what are important, what are not. We've got everything so we can touch every base. But at the end of the day, it's finding about what fits you, not drowning you with information, because that creates a lot of liability. It's hard for smaller clubs to start bringing in, and it may not fit in well with what your national groups are prescribing as their policies. So what we need to do is tailor, finding out what your individual demands are, and making sure you've got policies for them. Secondly, as well as implementation. If we give you a big stack of policies, lots of volunteers and people who don't do this full time are going to struggle to make sure they are actually coming through in reality correctly. So it's about, if we give you anything, how you can work with your clubs to make sure that those policies translate from page to reality as seamlessly as possible. Because at the end of the day, if you're not using a policy, if it's not reacting well with what you need to do, there's no point having it. So making sure it goes from page to reality and making sure everyone in the club is absolutely critical, and that's where we would assist with. Again, it's about consulting with stakeholders, making sure that the policies that are affecting volunteers and members of the club, making sure people know how they work, making sure that they put in their 2 cents so you're not throwing things on people, worrying them and creating issues down the track. I'm very big on consulting with people and making sure that everyone who's going to be affected by something has at least some input into it. It doesn't have to be deciding, but making sure that they are at least aware of what's coming and they can start bringing themselves in line with it is important for your clubs. We have a huge list of policies, like I've said, roughly broken down into the following categories. Financial policies, for making sure that however your finances are dealt with are in clear, crisp formats. Secondly, governance, and that big one. It's a hard one to deal with. We've got endless policies, but things your clubs can think about. How can your governance ideas be broken down into clear policies that everyone can see, understand, and implement? Thirdly, human resources, wide-ranging from cultural to health and safety to everything you'll need for human resources. Making sure that whatever your club needs there is being approached properly. Operating procedures, which I've made a note here that older clubs may not have adaptations for digital ages. Making sure that your operating procedures are accurate for 2016. Making sure you've got proper privacy, digital communication policies, making sure that everyone who needs them is aware, And finally, the big one, which we talk about later in the day, is health and safety. There's a lot going on there. We have a lot of documents here for incident reporting and making sure that you don't have any unneeded liabilities for health and safety. Governance assistance. Now, you're probably going to hear a lot about governance. A lot of people who can assist, and we're by no means everything here. What we really want to do is provide some governance assistance where it can be used in legal context, and more importantly, tie it back into bringing policies through. Making sure that everything's in as straight line as possible, and helping your governance boards with making sure efficiency is the critical thing to do. We push for autonomy. Like I've said, I don't want to sit in an office and tell you how to write your clubs. What we want to do is make sure that you, as the clubs themselves, have as much information as possible. Because at the end of the day, your clubs, you have to run them, and you have to know exactly what the clearest governance you can do. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're pointing you in the right direction. Establishing a dialogue so you can keep coming back to us and saying, are we on the right track? And just nudging you there, keeping you moving along. Because I can't run your clubs, it's all on you. And that's why we just want to make sure that everything's moving smoothly. Again, governance I see as a piecemeal thing. We could drown you in information, like you probably have a lot of today, but I like to give you things one at a time, or a few things at a time. Let you process them and move forward. So at least we're not drowning the smaller clubs with information. We want to make sure you can actually adapt to the issues you've got. The second way we can do it is in a society health check. You may think our club's going fine. It's been going fine for a long time. But things change. People are very flighty, and a little thing can break someone. So what we'd like to do is the idea of a warrant of fitness for your club. You can come in and show us the documents, these are the policies, this is the constitution, this is what we think is going to happen. And we could go through that and say, great, you've been doing fantastic, but here's a few ideas you can do to improve. Just to make sure, even though things are going smoothly, they're as smoothly as possible. Clubs should be well-oiled machines, and if possible, we'd like to address issues to prevent conflicts happening down the track. The big thing is conflict prevention. By making sure all the documents you have are as clean as possible, you can hopefully prevent something down the track. Not necessarily, but by keeping things as tidy as possible, it's best for you. Stitch in time saves 9, I suppose. But the reality is conflicts do happen. And that's the final thing we want to try assist with, is dispute resolution. Now, the thing I've got to say now is we can't give you the world. We want to deal with smaller disputes. So if Manawatu people are aware of things, Hockey Manawatu, your Creative Sound Society, that's where things are getting out of hand. And that's something, a big issue that we couldn't deal with as the Manawatu Community Law Centre. But what we can do is small level disputes. Try to stop things before they snowball into something big. The way we can do that is advise your group in one of two ways. Firstly, will be the legal implications. What is the reality and the legislation and the law around the issue you've got? And does that give you options going forward and how you're going to deal with it? The second way is alternative and non-legal ways of resolving matters. Because even though the law may say something, it's nice to work out ways that keep it out of courts and keep it out of messy things. How can we deal with issues on a personal level, not a legal issue, and help you through that? And if none of that works, we can provide mediation services. When you're dealing with boards, you can often get into deadlocks. Things just don't move. So what we can look at doing is seeing whether we can use a mediator provided by Manawatu Community Law Centre to hopefully break some of that deadlock. Bringing in both parties to a dispute and seeing if there's a way we can talk through something without having to walk it to court. Any way to solve an issue before it gets worse, we'll try to assist with, and that's something you have to liaise with us and see what assistance we can provide going forward. And keeping it incredibly short, it's simply knowing how to contact us. So we've got sign-up sheets today. If you want to give us your details, have a chat to me and ask any questions. Maybe I can answer them today. Secondly, you're more than welcome to phone us. We've got business cards and pamphlets for you to all take away. And finally, emailing is a good way to do it, opening up a dialogue that we can talk whenever we're both free and arrange appointments from there. But that's really all I have to say. I said it was very brief. It's just about letting you know we exist and we are here to help for any issues you've got, whether it be guidance, warrant fitnesses, or dispute resolution. And that's all I have to say. So unless there's questions, I'm more than willing to take out my card, talk to you about anything you've got on the top of your head, and go from there.
I just had one question.
Yeah.
You were talking about the creation of constitutions.
Yeah.
A lot of clubs have them, but they become outdated. So the process, what's a couple of quick points about the process of constitution review, reviewing a constitution?
So for that,
It can get really messy.
It can, and for doing that, what I'd look at is the base constitution. I then provide, like I said, some constitutions that are newer around the topic, pointing out the good and bad points, telling you that checklist of what needs to be in a constitution as of 2016, and guiding you through that. Like I said, I can't sit down and write constitutions all day, but what I can do is make it as easy as possible for someone to just make those basic changes. Having a checklist of knowing what needs to be in the constitution is probably the hardest bit. From there, it's just writing it to what the board wants to be in there.
Do you have a checklist with you?
I do. I should have printed off 1 million copies. But what I'll do is we'll trade details and we'll go from there. I mean, with constitutions, we can give you the checklist and set you loose. But what could be better is just having a bit more of a dialogue and talking about how that checklist should be used.
I just want to compare it with the constitution right now.
Sure. And if you want, we can do the warrant of fitness check to make sure everything around it works fine. Anything else? Quickly. We're funded by the City Council to sort of provide assistance for all clubs, not just sports clubs. We've got everything, charitable trusts, corporate societies, got everything. And this is just part of it. So making sure the whole sports realm is properly serviced.
So is it a free service?
Yes,
Yeah.
I probably should have made that explicit. We are a free service. It doesn't cost you anything, it comes back to us.
Big elephant in the room. Solicitors and
Liam, on behalf of Manawatu, I'd like to thank you for your informative discussion. If anyone has any further questions, like William has said, just get in contact with them or get in contact with us at Sport Manawatu. We've got our business cards and William's quite useful too. This is just a small token of appreciation for your presentation. Thank you.